Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome, Sister Jenna. It is so nice to have you here.
I don't think you had a choice. I got stuck with you because of
And I love it.
on.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and I have the blessing of having Sister Jenna on her birthday at my house. So happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm almost 60.
Yes.
But I'm not counting. Almost.
And the beautiful conversation that we've been having with all that's going on for everyone and all of you within the world. It has come to our home. We've been talking about the coronavirus, and it really brought to us, because we were wanting to get everybody here for your birthday, and we kept thinking and people saying, I'm sick and I can't come, I don't want to get you sick. And 3 and 4 of the large events had all canceled. So it brought us to this conversation of what's going on and how is it going to be for all of you at home. And I know for me, it brought up this conversation for more than anything about my responsibility, because my husband didn't want to go a lot of places and I just wanted to go everywhere. And it brought this conversation of what if I go and catch it and bring it and infect him. So this has been the first condition that brought me into this conversation. This isn't only about me. This is really, I'm responsible for other human beings. So even if I say I don't care, well, I need to care for others. So that's what it had for me.
Yeah. And I'm going to invite you to put it in context. I just got back from India a week ago, Monday. And since my birthday was Thursday, and Dr. Habib Segedi, who I'd like to give a big shout out to, who's the founder of the Global Love Button, Marianne, you might know Dr. Habib as well. And they were having a pretty big gala on Saturday with Chris Martin, Michael Beckwith, and a host of us. And it was a hard decision for them to cancel that. Even me going to Agape on Sunday with a whole bunch of friends, that's had to be canceled. And so it left me like, well, now what do I do? I came all the way here from Washington, D.C., away from my friends and family, to support this movement and to support this moment. And on the night of my arrival, everything was canceled. So then Foojan and I are sitting together and go, what is this? This is a global pause. We are now witnessing a global pause, and our lives are changing in ways that we could never imagine. So I booked my ticket to go back early tomorrow, and I have my mother with me. But one of the most amazing things was the eerie feeling I felt walking through that airport. And the feeling of the suppressed fear in the hearts and minds of people, as if either I don't know what to do, is this real or not, or what might happen to me. And I think we need to address this with all of us. What can we do to learn from what this means? And in what way can we maybe utilize the time that we have at home? And what does this global pause mean for our lives? And so we wanted to kind of...
And we wanted to share with great friends and amazing power women and men who are in the community and have obviously shared with a lot of you and have a lot of amazing experiences.
The wonderful Marianne Williamson, which I don't have to tell you too much of who she is, activist, mother, presidential former candidate who rocked the stages and has gotten everybody awoken. We have the wonderful Elaine Whitefeather, who is about to release a new book, who's doing a lot of good work with Native Americans and women empowerment. We have the beautiful Allison Stoner, who's my adopted child, and who's doing a wonderful podcast called Simplexity. And if you remember Allison, she was on Ellen as a little 12-year-old doing the jigaloo. Jigaloo. Allison, did I do that okay? Jigga, right. And also she did this beautiful video with Missy Elliott called Work It or Work Out or something of that nature. And I think Maura will also join us as well, and we'll talk a little more. But as we start tonight's conversation, can we play a beautiful song to set the tone?
Of course.
This is If I Had One Wish by Bliss.
If I had one wish, then what would it be? for each man to live life in peace, to live without fear in a world that's secure. Some say it's a fool's dream, but I'm not so sure. I see all your faces on my TV, driven and hungry with eyes full of tears. Mourning your children, fathers and friends, caught in a war that just never ends. How will it be till your life is mine? And all I believe in has turned into lies. Without and all that I know is in its talking is love for mine. Oh, I've seen a place much more than a dream, a place of such beauty it hurts just to see. A place of no pain, no crying, no more, where peace is the treasure that has been restored.
Welcome to the Global Pause. I think that was important for us to start our conversation today. I'm Sister Jenna, your co-host, along with Dr. Foojan Zeine, and we have decided to come together to talk about the world pausing at this time because of the pandemic, a virus that no one can really quite understand how it was created and what it's actually doing for and to our lives. And we have some incredible experts and friends on the air, and we're going to ask them to share with us what they feel this means to them personally. What do they think this means spiritually as a message to the world? And what do we do with all the time now that we have on our hands, with the fact that we're being told, stay home, don't go, don't take that flight, get out of here, don't go to public events. And a new tag that they've been talking a lot about, social spacing. Yes. In my spiritual tradition, we do something called drishti, which is like we meet another person with eyes of love. And so I've been practicing social distancing for a long time, but I think we need to do that more, look at each other with eyes of love. So welcome, everyone. Glad that you could join us.
Hugging to all of you.
Yeah, like angel hugs. Maybe I'll start off with you. Marianne, thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Jenna, thank you.
You've been through a lot. You've met thousands and millions of people over the years. You've seen a lot. You were a big fighter for the AIDS crisis back in the day, and you've been continuously fighting for people to live a more value-based life and a more full life. Coming from your perspective, what's Marianne feeling personally as a result of this global epidemic of coronavirus?
Well, you know, the AIDS crisis, and so for me personally, this is resonant of another experience that I've lived through. namely the AIDS crisis. I want to go, first of all, to something that both you and the doctor have already said. I think your expression that it's a global pause is a very, very good one. And as with so much else in this situation, you know, there's an old, a traditional Christian saying that there is no spot where God is not. And there are many riches here for us to mine. Even though it's an unfortunate event, obviously, and something we would not have consciously chosen, there is a lot here for us. First of all, you said it's a global pause, and I'm reminded of a line from Blaise Pascal, the French philosopher, who said that every problem in the world stems from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. We live in a civilization which bears no impulse control. Everybody's running around like a chicken with our head chopped off. No one knows how to sit quietly in a room alone. I think that there are a lot of people who probably have novels, great literature, poetry on their bookshelves, and they've never picked up those books. Music to listen to, conversations to be had with people that you love. There probably will be some childrenness.
A lot. I thought about that too.
It's not, this is obviously, I'm not in any way minimizing the horror and the potential horror of this experience for people who are going through it. I'm not minimizing that at all. But I am saying that the fact that there's a global pause is of itself not the worst thing. That's because we move too quickly. We're all like, we can't get off. You know, the world is the mad, what was that song? I want to get off. And also what the doctor was saying, that you're not pausing just for yourself. Even if you were someone who said, I don't care, I want to go out. In order to display compassion for other people, you're staying home. So this is not only a moment of pause, but this is a moment of a recognition of our shared humanity, unlike any other. And that it is not just an experience of grief, like let's say something like 9/11 was. This is an experience of an ongoing a relationship to one another in which we will navigate this only for ourselves, only if we are willing to navigate it with other people and for other people and with other people in mind. And that's what the AIDS crisis was. It was a moment, everything in life, obviously, gives us an opportunity. How are you going to inhabit the space? You're going to inhabit the space thinking only about yourself? Or are you going to inhabit the space in a contracted place of fear? Or are you going to inhabit the space with your heart open and in a loving space? You know, as I was saying on social media last night, isolate in terms of social distancing, but don't isolate emotionally. Don't isolate spiritually. And I think each and every one of us has, you know, it's like when Martin Luther King said, we are materially passive, but we are spiritually active. We might need some material passivity right now, but a lot of our chronic, almost adrenaline-based, almost addictive busyness in our culture actually is a masquerade. It's a mask. It's something we do instead of going deep to the things that are most important sometimes. There are very important things to do, such as who are the population that I'm most concerned about. You talked about turning 60. I'm 67. So 60s are fine. The people that we are really the most vulnerable population right now are the people who live alone, who are 70 and older. Many people in our society, they live alone. They don't have anyone to get them food. They don't have anyone to help them. If they do get sick, most of the people that they know who are sick are their age too. So I think the first thing we want to do is, who might need my help? I have two friends, and you know, just even in our own age group, hello, already. I have two friends with lung debilitating diseases. I have another one who just had a surgery. Who do you know who's like 80? You know what I'm saying? You have a lot to do just checked in on your parents, I say to people. The way to move through any experience well is to get over yourself. So if you're young and healthy, the way to not panic, think about people who are not young and healthy. Be there for others. And there's so much can be done online. The mayors will be extremely important in this. And the hotlines that mayors should set up are not only the hotlines for people who want help, but hotlines for people who are willing to give help. Everybody right now, you could start a Facebook group of support. Everybody can get busy now during this time of pause, using the internet for such a network of love and compassion that miracles can even come from this.
Can I jump in here and maybe ask Allison to speak to the younger voices and what they're feeling and thinking? Because we're in a culture of just this. Marianne, you and I know how we are. You know, now you're in DC, and you know we're like this. And Allison and her generation, they're like this, but she's starting her own podcast, Simplexity. She's doing her work. She's going up against a lot of the things that are like in Hollywood norms, and is trying to raise the vibrations of how folks should really be in this entertainment industry, for example.
There's also this concept that we were talking about when you look at social media. I know that it has a bad rap, that it's created more depression and anxiety for people. It's isolated them more. But as Marianne, you were saying, I think that the concept of actually coming and utilizing the social media now, that when you're not together, you can FaceTime with them, WhatsApp with them, talk to them, not just
Absolutely.
text, but have this conversation face to face, the same way we're doing it right now with Zoom, having that heart to heart conversation and eye to eye conversation through the social media, Rushdie, through the social media. And when you were saying that, I remember when my friend was sick, we got her soup and everything, and we went behind her door and we left it, and we texted like this outside of your door, and she would come in and pick it up and take it in. So those are the examples of things we could just do right now.
And we will need people to coordinate those things. You know, I've been around people in deep crisis a lot in my career. And one of the things that I've seen is that when someone does face a crisis, and I think this is what we're seeing right now, so many of the ultimately unimportant preoccupations that normally dominate our lives just fall away in the first 10 minutes. And the things that matter most, but that get too often peripheralized in a world that has gone insane, we're ready for deeper conversations and richness. Let this not be without meaning. If this can be an experience, I was saying, you know, I've been using my own social media quite a bit. I've been on Twitter, and you know, I've said things like, okay, you know, this experience of everybody experiencing the same fear, wondering if I'm going to die from this. This is what people in Baghdad felt when we invaded Iraq. You know this fear every day of, oh my God, is something terrible going to happen to me? That's what millions of children in American schools feel every day because of gun violence in their schools or where they live. You know, Americans have become very desensitized to the pain of others. What about those people in Yemen? There are so many people around the world. You know, suffering gives you X-ray vision into the suffering of others.
Is that where the virus is coming from, though, is all the suffering? Because you think about the voices of the younger generation really being able to find ways to communicate or maybe help each other out. Allison, how are you feeling personally? And as you know, we want this a conversation, you know, so feel free to jump in whenever you feel really called. But Allison, from where you are, you know, we are almost 5 decades older than you. And I'm so inspired by just how you want to say or do things. So can you speak to that, Allison Stoner?
Thank you, Sister Jenna. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate being among really special and just impactful human beings. I have a lot of respect for everyone here. And I think my initial response as someone who grew up in entertainment and does have a platform with multiple million people listening for my feedback and response to things, I do have a heightened responsibility to look at multiple perspectives that include the science, the academia, the systemic issues, the spiritual facets, and try to reconcile all of them that holds all perspectives instead of negating one or the other. I think what I'm sensing is it's important to recognize as a young person the both and framework, because in times of crisis, we often see people leaning toward one of two polarized opposites, either a highly factual, maybe even panic-stricken approach, or a dismissive, avoidant carelessness, which can also be cloaked under the guise of hyper spirituality as well, and just a sense of detachment overall. And so I would personally like to suggest, you know, standing in a space, as Marianne suggested, that's infinite, that when you think of solutions, when you consider possibilities, you sense your body and your overall physiology, your thought process expanding, considering abundance, which allows you to think of others as well, as opposed to noticing when your body contracts in a space of fear and you feel limited, and you enter survival mode. And so I think first and foremost, as a young person who is growing up in the information age, and I have a high expectation to know specific facts right away, I think it's okay to desire to be informed. And I would even suggest that historically our willful ignorance in terms of the planet, health, society has contributed to this pandemic emerging, and the errors we're seeing with, you know, how we're going about diagnosing and testing and everything. And so if you're looking for sources of information, I would personally suggest being cautious towards sensationalized media outlets and looking for information from experts in the areas of emerging infectious disease, of pandemic preparedness, biosecurity. These are folks who eat, sleep, and breathe this information at all times and aren't just reacting to it right now. They've been thinking about solutions for us so that we can start taking care of ourselves at home and being mindful of others. And then additionally, I would also suggest that if you're at home more than you're used to being, and you're going to be around family, maybe that there are rocky relationships, there is a very real lived experience day to day, that you are in a routine. And if that's going to be disrupted, I would encourage everyone, like I'm trying to establish, a sense of a routine and a ritual every day that will help your body stay grounded and just in the natural rhythm of daytime versus evening, as opposed to, you know, anxiety stricken. And that may mean carving out personal space and just making sure you can retreat and have moments of silence if you're not used to being around these family members or roommates or colleagues or people during these times. And then also just, you know, I think as a gesture to the planet and humanity, as Marianne suggested, going beyond yourself, building off of that idea, this global pause and sort of this kind of boiling point where we have political and economic systems and, you know, the virus as well as the locust plague and just so many different things happening simultaneously. I am viewing it as such a moment of clarity of the interconnectedness of all beings and systems, organizations, because, you know, I may personally not be affected by the virus right now, but my actions, my negligence, my decisions as a consumer, everything does contribute to how this is going to affect people across sectors, families, young and old. And so taking a moment to pause and show that grace and compassion to others, and then also combining that with the diligence of, in upcoming elections, using your vote to be mindful about the issues that are affecting people across the board in this, you know, healthcare and medical care and everything. I think it's such an opportunity to see the vast and yet intricate interconnectedness of everything, and to not be overwhelmed by it, but to join in the unity of it, and to offer ourselves from a heart-centered standpoint, as opposed to just using logic. Yeah. I think we have to be willing to stand in the tension, in the gray area, and build the space within here, so that we space without as well. Those are my initial responses.
Oh, and we're not going to end it there with you, because I really feel that what this is so call. I think everything now that we're talking about is trying to amplify us being better versions of ourselves. And this global pause forced upon us, what is it doing to you and me and all? I mean, but hasn't the ancient folks have been telling us about these times? Isn't that right, Elaine White Feather? Oh, right.
There's also that,
Mitakoye.
yes,
Mitakoye Legacy. We're all related.
Allison was saying something which brought up this conversation, which I had actually today with couples and families that I work with. The children are home. So now all the schools are closed. So now you have the parents who have to stay home, not because they're on vacation, because everybody has to stay home. So they're worried about financial matters because they're not going home, and that's going to be an issue. The kids are there, and they're there all day with no activity because sometimes they can't even afford to create the activity because they, because of the fear. This is not like, we're going to have a vacation. They can't go anywhere. So there's also this issue that's getting created between husband and wives and how to be with the children, how to entertain children.
Pandemic.
All of the relationship issues are showing up. And part of what she was saying about the, creating those spaces, and what I've noticed is if they can actually sit down together and come up with some sort of a scheduling, there's a new scheduling, in breakfast we'll get together and then everybody go into your own space, do such and such, come back at lunch. And this way we can create this spacing where we're agreeing upon versus each person goes into one hole wanting their own space, and then the other one keeps knocking at them and they get like irritated at that.
It's an interesting time.
Yeah.
Elaine, what do you have to say, and what are you realizing about this time personally, my sister?
Speaking about those things, today, in the last couple of days, the training that I've been offering is be not defined by your experiences, but rather let your experiences reveal you. I think it is an opportunity in this global pause moment that we as a humanity have co-created a dream, as my ancestors would say. And that we must take our burden basket, our responsibility for the ways in which we have lived, as fear has been our guardian and guide that leads us to power and control and all kinds of things. And I think has evolved our humanity in a way that moves us away from our heart center and more valuing knowledge and, I don't know, those kinds of things that we can't even access anymore. So also in this moon, it's time for us to learn how to accept a deeper truth of our humanity as well. And I think it also helps us understand that as our privilege, we can maybe let go of some of the pettiness of privilege. And that's what suffering does, and because I work so much with the most marginalized communities, suffering is something that I'm here to try to tend to in some way, to end the heritage of suffering of humanity. And I think that begins with this thing about fear. And so we have an opportunity in this pause to choose maybe love, maybe not the fearful kind of love where we have to be codependent and cling to one another, where we think like we have to separate out and do all those kinds of things, but maybe we're really thinking about that kind of transcendent love that Marianne was also speaking about, and everyone has, that in this moment, we have lost all our privilege, everyone.
Yes, I think all our privilege has been taken away from us, isn't it?
Yes, and so there's an equalizing moment here and a way to unify with that. If we focus on our losses so much, then we will stay, in this chasm of fear, I think. But if we move to a place where we're understanding perhaps what we are gaining in the moment, what is strong and right about us, our families, ourselves, our people, our nation, there's so much that's wrong, But maybe this is an opportunity now too in this pause that we feed what is right and strong, that our love has brought us together, and that our compassion to end the suffering for one another, maybe that's what suffering is meant to do. I don't know. But it certainly has done.
Marianne was saying that what we are going through right now, how did the kids in Syria feel? How did the kids in Baghdad feel? Is that America's getting a taste of what suffering feels like? And does that mean we are growing up?
I think it is.
Look, I was on my flight just on Thursday, right? And I'm with my wonderful, sweet mother who remembers nothing. She didn't even remember my birthday. I said, how in the world could you not remember such an excruciating, painful moment in your life? But I mean, I want to make sure that she's okay. And
Yes,
there were three young, strong men, and they put their luggages in the bin with no consideration about the people behind them.
correct.
I was picking up the luggage. The steward came and he says, God, I wish they would just put it right. And I went, it's okay. It's like we've stopped thinking about the person behind us. And I think with everyone on, one of the things I think the global pause might be doing for us is think about the person behind you
Yes,
and think about the energy that you are leaving in the space.
yes,
And that might be what we are having to learn through right
yeah,
now.
truly.
Now, leave us with one of your Native American prayers that always makes me go to tears.
Well, I think this is an opportunity for us as a human tribe. And perhaps we want to be the ones. And so all our ancestral prayer, I was just saying this today, and I don't know who the author is because I think it's intentional that it affects all of us from all cultures. And so we say, may we be the ones. May we be the ones that bring forward the good, the true, and the beautiful. May we be the ones. May we be the ones that ends the harmful family patterns and bring forward the best of our human nature, of our ancestral heritage. May we be the ones. I think for us here in America today and around this world, we can choose to be the ones. And we can bring forward the good and the true and the beautiful of who we are as humanity, as the creator of this universe intended us to be. And so I think if we could put our focus and attention in our prayers that way, indeed, we shall be the ones. I gotta run. I thank you so much for including me in this moment, but I'm about to run out of cell energy too, and so I'll have to shut down.
You get charged.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's great.
Om Shanti, and happy Evolution Day to you and to everyone. Thank you so much. Be at peace all, and peace out. Bye-bye.
Elaine Whitefeather, everyone. If you've not heard about her, please look her up. She's been doing some incredible work in waking up the Native Americans in this country. It's so interesting that a whole tribe of individuals who have offered such sacredness to the land have to fight for their voices to be heard. Speaking about Native Americans, then let's go all the way to India, where I was just a week ago, and Michael Beckwith just got back 2 days ago. And he's like, what is this coronavirus? What's going on? I was just on the mountaintop. I was with all the sages and all the amazing people. Ain't nobody worrying about coronavirus in India. And then and you're like, you might have to reduce your services. The event that we were going to be at to honor each other in the Love Button, Global Love Button, that was canceled. It's like, how are you feeling coming all the way from India, where there's love, sustenance, mysticism, spirituality, togetherness, to now a culture where people are like, don't touch me, don't hug me, and they don't even look at each other anymore. What are your thoughts? Welcome back to America, Michael Beck.
Thank you. I think, can you hear me okay?
Mm.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. When I arrived in America, and I'd been following the news, so I knew what was going on, even a little bit before I left to go to India. It felt like individuals took a nightmare pill. They took a pill, and suddenly they were living in a nightmare of fear, doubt, and worry, panic. And instead of catching inspiration from their prayers, they were catching the contagion of worry, and they were spreading that to each other. So they weren't even necessarily spreading the coronavirus. They were spreading fear. They were spreading worry. They were spreading doubt, and distance from each other. And so I think this is a time in which we have to become aware that fear is misdirected interest. It's placing attention on worst case scenarios. And rather than, we have the ability to shift our attention. And so fear is misdirected interest. And so we have to become more interested in how we are evolving, how we're growing, what blessings can emerge from all of this. We have to become very interested in that, because one thing I know for sure, worry is not a spiritual practice. Worry is not a spiritual practice. A spiritual practice has something to do with elevating our awareness, having a new base point, and then walking in the world with that. So I want to remind people to stop becoming susceptible to the contagion, to the emotional contagion that's being spread through the media, being spread through the panic in people's minds, because the flus have come every single year, and individuals have died from the flus. But no one has died from the flu. People have died from ancillary issues that the flu just exposed. And so we're invited to lift our consciousness first, come into the oneness with the presence of God, and then do responsible things to boost our immune system, take care of the body temple, the mental body, the emotional body, and then ask, how can I serve? That's compassion. This opportunity that we have now is to birth a higher level of compassion. How can I serve? And when I first tuned in, Sister Jenna, you were saying, is America finally growing up? And I can remember when the Dalai Lama once said that Americans hadn't suffered enough.
Yeah.
Now, he was not advocating suffering. He was just saying that there's a redemption in when individuals have to go through something. If they grow through it, then we look back at those moments and see what looked like the worst time was actually the best time, because it uncovered gifts and talents and capacities and latent potential within us that had been covered up. We grow primarily when everything is going well. People don't grow as fast.
Yeah.
They don't pray as much. They don't meditate as much. They don't take care of themselves. But during times of seeming darkness, we can really have a growth spurt at this time as a community and as individuals.
What are your
So,
thoughts about the growth? What are your thoughts in how we should start growing now? And I would love Marianne to come on as well and speak to something that you said, that fear is misdirected interests, which I think is really powerful. And the third thing is, I want to not be afraid. But what if I don't have the karmic buildup, everyone, where I've been doing so much service that I'm not afraid, that I'm afraid because I don't think I've done enough good, maybe. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So we can talk about that.
But I come from Iran when I was 12 years old. And I actually found Americans very compassionate in regards, like in comparison with maybe Europeans or many of other countries. And I really loved that compassion. Like Americans made me grow up and, embraced me. Something changed though. Something also in that area of compassion from, when you say like, okay, maybe they weren't suffering enough and that's why they don't have the compassion. I recall they really did. Something changed. And then I hope that, yes, we're growing up to have the compassion again.
Can you talk to that, Marianne, Michael? I mean, this is powerful. And Allison, jump in. Remember, this is a conversation. We just don't want to.
Yeah, but I think that something has eroded for to a degree, and there's been obviously the polarization and separation within our nation. And this is an opportunity to allow this particular virus, which has no discrimination at all.
Yes,
It has no borders. It has borders or walls or anything. China, Italy, United States, wherever. And so it's an opportunity for us to, because it doesn't have any borders, it doesn't have discrimination, perhaps it's giving us a message to transcend our inner borders within ourselves, to have no discrimination, and to come back to a global compassion.
The global compassion and global pause.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are pausing, Michael, more than any time before as a collective. How many meditation collective viral programs have we done? Did the world pause to the point that they're pausing today? No.
This might be an opportunity that we can really bring people together and stop and have the pause that really refreshes.
Marianne, any thoughts?
In the Course in Miracles, there's a line that says, it's not up to you what you learn, it's merely up to you whether you learn through joy or through pain. And both for this country and for the human race, we're going to learn some things now. We're going to learn them through joy, or we're going to learn them through pain. And what we need to learn is to start living for one another. But living for one another goes against the dominant economic and political models on our planet. It's interesting because Allison said we need to look at all of the systems, but notice how at least unconsciously, assiduously, we have avoided talking about economics or politics on this phone call. And so like Allison said, let's be mindful about the election. Okay, you want to be mindful? We need to start telling some truth. And I'm uncomfortable with a conversation with this many American women if we don't go there. Because let's be very clear, American economic and political system is a large part of, at least for this country, why we are so unprepared compared to other countries. And our lack of preparedness, of course, speaks to everything we're talking about here with the Native American population. This is an economic issue. You know, when you read, you see on television that all these basketball players have been tested positive or negative. Why did they get tested? They got tested because they are assets to a multi-billion-dollar business empire called Sports in America. So
Yep.
is showing us the underbelly of America. If we're going to be mindful, if we want unity here, we're going to have to get real, everybody. And what this is showing of the underbelly of America, the fact that we have a healthcare system, when you talked about how did this happen? When the doctor was talking before, I do think it's true. The average American, we are good people. We are decent people. And I think on an individual level, we do care. We care about ethics. We care about living right by each other. But starting in the 1980s, we withdrew the conversation about ethics and mutual compassion and conscience from the public sphere. We stopped talking about ethics and character and compassion in terms of public policy. Right. Even when Eileen was talking about the tribe, the Native American tradition is not just care about the person behind you. The Native American tradition is care about the tribe. Yeah. That's what politics is. Politics and economics has to do with our collective. But because back in the 80s, we acquiesced to this horrifyingly amoral economic system that has become this dominant organizing principle of our society, where short-term profit for huge multinational corporations comes before all ethical or moral consideration for people or for planet. We have, for instance, a system which was completely unprepared for this, where everything from, let's say, there had been 47 pandemic centers, but 37 had been closed. It's been all about starving the beast of public investment. That's why America is caught now with our pants down, because we have withdrawn economic resources from the things which would secure the common good in order to give more economic resources to the marketplace and private expenditure. So so now we have this pandemic where particularly people who are uninsured.
Yes.
You see, the United States is the only country in the industrialized advanced world that has not already done mass testing. You also have these school closures all over. You have these public officials having, in state after state, having to make these agonizing decisions. You know, the doctor was talking before about closing schools. It's not just the issue, of course, of these kids staying home and mommy and daddy need something for you to do. They're dealing with the fact that millions of these children only get fed when they go to school. So this is really showing us the dangers of 13 million hungry children in America. It's showing us the dangers of a solely profit-driven healthcare system. It's showing us the dangers of 40 million people living in poverty and tens of millions of people uninsured. So I think part of this global pause should be a moaning and a groaning and a pain that we should feel, that is healthy for us to feel. And it's you know, God works in such mysterious ways because we're being forced to just be present with the things that we need to look at. And everybody on this call knows that. And the beauty of the people on this call, I believe, is that our skill set, what we do, our vocation and our careers are holding the space for a compassionate conversation, even about those things which are most difficult to look at. But we have to look at all that dark underbelly, because that's the virus. It's a political and an economic virus, among other things, that is being outpictured, I believe, by the coronavirus.
I am itching to jump in here.
Go for it.
Because everything that you've said, including everyone on, I'm like feeling we need to send out a messaging, everyone, that it's not just about, I'm going to close schools, we're going to end this, but we're now needing to ask public officials, the people in the media, can you also contribute 30 seconds to inspire the world and people to say, why don't you spend some time with your family? Why don't you find a way to talk to somebody that you haven't spoken to a long time over the phone? And they're not doing that. And I think that one of the things that we should bring out of this conversation when we share it and post it is that we're going to invite the leaders of B. Please add to the fear and the negativity that you're sending out there. Find a way for our families to talk to one another again. Find a way for political parties to find common ground in some way or the other. Like Michael was saying, it's like a global compassion that's being called upon all of us. I want to go back to something that Marion addressed to Alison Stone, because one of the things that Alison Stone had shared, being the young voice on this particular conversation, is she's into the both and.
Of course it is.
And I think it's really important. And Alison, talk to us about that and why you think it's so important, and in what way can we really begin to find a way to come more like together, knowing that sometimes we're just so stubborn, we just don't take that time to really feel the heart of the other person, to be compassionate, to be both and, like, both and, we're like both, but not really and.
Sure. So obviously here in the Western sphere, we're highly analytical and logic driven. We appreciate and respect empirical evidence, and we exist in a paradigm of either or. You're right or you're wrong, you're black, you're white, you're this or that, but you can't be both. And surely there's no space for everything to coexist. And so of course, entering a framework of both and allows us to understand the nature of reality itself, which is multidimensional. And something that I stress on my podcast Simplexity is seeking first to understand before expecting to be understood. And leading with that kind of perspective opens the opportunity to bridge the gaps, to stand yourself as a bridge between, even within your own households during this time, your one family member who's panicking and the other who doesn't seem to care at all, and just being able to hear both, acknowledge everyone's reality and perception, and then again, another facet of both and is it fosters space for creativity and innovative thinking and new strategies, as opposed to, I couldn't see it this way or that way, therefore there's no solution. Both and goes, let's consider all options. Let's bring in people from academia, from science, from healthcare, from politics, economics, from spiritual leadership, and let's have a conversation just like we're doing right now, where together we're standing in that gray area. And from my experience being here, it's providing hope as opposed to more fear, and I'm appreciative of it, and I feel not only heard and validated for what I'm contributing, but then also I get to learn from other people. So for everyone tuning in who's going to be at home and you're going to get to hear everyone's opinion, just considering standing in that space of both and might just allow you even to more emotionally regulate, so you don't feel so triggered by what people are saying, but you're able to go, okay, that's real for them, here's what's real for me, how can we work together to find new solutions? And to piggyback on what Marianne was sharing, because I think it's and Elaine actually also, hi Dr. Beckwith, nice seeing you, thanks for being here. So both of you shared about sorry, let me get my train of thought. Oh yes, so power dynamics and leadership, what's happening right now and what accountability we need within our leadership. This drums up the question, of course, who's profiting in all of this? And as a young person, I stress to my audience to always consider who is benefiting, because of course, if they feel that their position of power is threatened, they're going to do whatever it takes, even at the expense of the well-being of millions of people, to maintain that stability, even if it's false peace, right? So we get an opportunity to look at our leadership, and not just in terms of political, but also the organizations and companies we work for, the figureheads of our own households. We get to examine what values am I seeing them utilize as they're sending out the newsletter or announcing things about what plans they have to care for everyone. And then also that begs the question, of us understanding our own power and our need to contribute here. And I hear a lot of, I'm very pragmatic. And so when I hear aspirational goals and the potentiality of how one could approach this situation just so beautifully and maturely, the idea, if not translated into action, is like cute, but we need something better than cute. And in this time period, as someone who works in entertainment, I understand that media, Netflix, everyone's going to be capitalizing on the fear. And so our tendency in these moments of high stress is going to be to seek easy ways to numb. We might fall back on some of our vices, emotional eating, drinking, smoking, things that actually are going to weaken our immune system and susceptibility to just making logical and healthy decisions about how to approach this. And so I would encourage people to remember that this opportunity for a global pause does not automatically bring about maturation. It does take that moment of saying, I'm willing to commit, as I'm watching this talk, and then afterwards, I'm going to set aside 15 to 30 minutes of silence to check in, to ask myself, what rituals do I need to establish in this time period so that I am not emotionally eating, so that I actually can do the tougher work that may be uncomfortable at first, but then allows this to bring about that transformation we're describing. It is available, it's not automatic. And the problem / opportunity, both and, of living in the digital age here is that our change is also determined and influenced by algorithms. So if Netflix sees more people watching crisis-centered media, of course, they're going to keep that as the trending material. We have to be mindful even about what we're double tapping, what we're consuming through our eyes, because the algorithm is responding to how we're engaging with platforms. So if that's something that you don't feel confident in approaching, consider just staying off of social media, or make sure you establish a grounded sense of self before going online. Otherwise, your self-concept, your stability, things can be dysregulated and fueled by the fear-driven media that will be trending. So I think that's just listening to everyone's contribution. For me, as a young person and speaking to younger generations here, it's about, like, I'm going all the way back to the beginning, acknowledging all of these different facets, and instead of being intimidated by them, understanding that through this time, we're not alone, we're able to have this conversation together. And if we stay creative about it, it's exposing as well as allowing new opportunities to emerge. So, I'm thankful for these moments. I found, actually, just in media in general, I was supposed to be flying to Canada tonight to film a show for a network, and they just canceled it. But thinking about the nature of entertainment, most likely I will still be making content even though other sectors are shut down, because what are people going to go toward? They're going to want to consume media on their devices. So I myself have to examine my own system and say, here's what I'm willing to do and not do within my own industry and field. And with the privilege and platform that I do have, how can I foster these kinds of conversations, lead guided meditations on my channels, via live streams, things like that. And that doesn't require you to have 1 million followers. You can, like Sister Jenna suggested, do this within your own community. We can mobilize in ways that don't have to be in person, but can be digitally and conceptually. So that's my 99 cents.
It's a massive 99 cents, and we love you for it. Marianne and Michael, jump on in when you're ready. Marianne?
I think there's a lot of heroism going on right now. And I don't think this is the time to be criticizing how other people are doing it, even the media. It is the media's job to tell us, it's like when Allison was talking about at the very beginning, there are many, many layers of what's going on. It's both and.
Yeah.
In order for humanity to survive, we need an integrative approach to healing civilization, just like there's an integrative approach to healing our lives. There's the external and the internal. So a lot of people on the media, I can't blame them right now that they're talking about some scary things. It is their job to report a lot of those external things. No, it's our job. Those of us on this call, I'm the one out there, right? We're all leading meditations and prayers, and that's kind of our job. That's what we do. So, that's not what they do. That's what
You want everybody to start.
yeah, and they also, I've received phone calls. I'm sure other people on this call have, from radio stations and TV stations. They're looking for people to give more inspirational work. Also, I think we want to remember all the amazing doctors, some of whom have already lost their lives, and nurses all over the world, what they are doing. They don't have the luxury of some of the nice things we're talking about that you can do for yourself. They're in there. They're working with people who are sick and dying. I also have seen on the media how a lot of companies are showing up right now. Because of all this business of giving food to people who need it at home. I was reading about how Grubhub is getting rid of their commissions right now in order to deliver food and medicine to people. I was, this whole business with these school closings, and the millions of American children who, because the schools will close, how are some of these kids going to eat? I was reading about all these restaurants coming together in Georgia. So we really have to honor all this bit about all these different levels. But what I see is everybody doing the best they can. I actually, and I can be really cynical about profit-driven corporate media. Nobody has been on this call probably as affected by it as I, but right now, I think right now a lot of people are really trying to get things right on this. And I think part of the compassion that we want to show to people is really holding a space. Everybody, for some people, this is kind of what we do. There are certain people on this call, we help people in crisis. We're used to it, but not everybody is. And then there's only one more thing I want to say. And I think for those of us who have a deep spiritual or religious understanding, the embrace, in all the great religious systems, the embrace of that realization is something we seek to live with as a constant, so that when moments of crisis come up, it doesn't have quite the same panic-driven, it's not the same panic-driven issue, because it's something we live with as a part of the duality of life.
Don't hang up, because I know Foojan's going to read something. Yeah. And I think that what you just touched is something so important, Marianne, is that for me, it's a call to deepen my connection to Source, so that my presence can vibrate the kind of a sense of safety and healing vibrations that my brothers and sisters are in need of. And so one of the things that I was talking to Dr. Foojan about is, I don't hear people talking about God. And I think after she reads this, I want us to talk about, is there a way, where does God play a role at this time? And I know, Michael, I want you to talk about that, Allison and Marianne, and Foojan, you're going to read us this thing by Rumi?
Yeah, I'm going to read this, but it also brought this conversation for me that, we all have always talked about, not always, but this past couple of years, about how much divided and polarized, we have become. And I know our conversation had been, what can we do? How come even at any point when they get people to talk about politics or ethnicities or any of these things, people keep getting more polarized instead of coming together.
That's why we need a spiritual conversation.
Yes, but look at what this thing has done. It's almost like that conversation has gone away for us as people. And we no longer care who's on our social media, who's an opposite, and we're
what
going
the president
into
is
the
saying.
president is saying, or so and so.
We were just saying every day we kept hearing about number 45. Now every day we keep hearing coronavirus, what's closing down. So look at how quick we sway.
We sway, and then we come together. Like what Miriam was saying, like how much businesses now are just coming to help each other, regardless of what ethnicity you are or what political affiliation you have. And I just think that that part of it is also something that's beautiful. All right.
I just want to say Carolyn Mace has sent her good wishes. Her mom just had a little bit of an accident and she couldn't join us. But she wants us to stay tight, stay strong, and keep our pure vibrations going. So Carolyn Mace, we love you very much.
Yes. So this is from the Rumi prescription by Melody Moezi. So this is what the Rumi says. It says, don't retreat, come near, don't lose faith, adhere. Seek the tonic nectar in the bitter sting. Go to the source of your spring. In love with insanity, I'm fed up with wisdom and rationality. All those served from their source yearn to return as a matter of course. Why seek pilgrimage at some distant shore when the beloved is right next door?
Michael Beckwith, you want to talk to that? You just came back from a pilgrimage.
First of all, my screen went out. Can you still see me?
No, I can't.
Oh, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, something happened to my phone here. I want to go back to something that Marianne said for a moment, and that is about death. And I think I began my conversation talking about the fact that people will die, those who are compromised. We look at last year, you had about 45 to 60,000 people that committed suicide. Every year within the medical system, you have 200,000 to 300,000 people that die from botched surgeries and and pharmaceutical drugs, things of that particular nature. And it's not an emergency when 200,000 or 300,000 people are dying every year within our own medical establishment. That, as Marianne reminded us, is more profit-driven than anything else. So death is constant, and so it brings something close to us when we realize it's that constant. And now it's the coronavirus. It's not as deadly as the hospital situation we're in, but it could be deadly. But so it brings us closer to what we call spiritual practice, where we're becoming keenly aware that if death is on our shoulder, we become not loosey-goosey with our time, but we ask, how can we serve? We ask, we didn't take an incarnation to walk lockstep in the status quo. We came to an incarnation to shatter the status quo and to bring our gifts, talents, and capacities and bring them into full orb, so that when we leave this planet, the world is different and better because of the fact that we walked here. So when something like this happens, we can ask, how is it that we can serve according to our paradigm, according to our giftedness, which is God becoming conscious of itself as our life. And so instead of retreating, instead of running and hiding, instead of putting our head in the ground like the proverbial ostrich, we have to ask, what is it that's mine to do? And knowing that it is the presence of God within us that is coming forth and expressing as us, that it gives us the strength, it gives us the fortitude, the vitality, the vigor to make a difference on the planet. So death is here. It's always been here.
Yeah.
There'll be more suicides. There'll be more botched surgeries. There'll be more pharmaceuticals given and people will die from them. And the big thing today is coronavirus, which is not going to take as many people as our own medical establishment will, by the way. So we need to keep that in perspective.
That's so true.
And so I appreciate what Marianne had to say, is that this is exposing things within our own system that are deplete. So we're calling on ourselves to really grow in compassion, to ask, how can we serve? What is it that we can do according to our giftedness? Everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something according to their giftedness. And then when we really, those of us on the phone that are on the Zoom here who have a spiritual practice and who teach, and as Marianne said, who lift people up during times of crisis, we know that the presence of God is not an abstract concept. Presence of God is real.
Yeah.
It's our very life. We are emanations of a life that never was born and will never die. And when we become rooted in that through spiritual practice, now we can walk with a level of courage. We can take heart with a level of courage and do what we're called to do according to our incarnation, to our karmic propensity, to our talents and gifts. And if we don't, we will suffer from regret for not doing what we're called to do.
Oh,
Right.
Michael, leave us with a step or a simple meditation that can connect us back to source, because as we come to a close, I think it's going to be important for all of us on this beautiful, beautiful, heartfelt global pause stemmed by the coronavirus.
Yeah.
To
Let me
have-
just say this. Let me say a couple of words,
uh-huh.
not Christian oriented, but words of Jesus the Christ that I think he gave us a very powerful teaching. He said, in the world, there'll be trials and tribulations. And then he gave a teaching, a practice, but be of good cheer because I have overcome that world. And so that's a short and simple situation. There's going to be stuff going down in the world. There's going to be trials. There's going to be tribulation. There's going to be virus. There's going to be racism. There's going to be bigotry. There's going to be homophobia. There's going to be misogyny. There's going to be a gross consumerism and a profit over people in the world. But he gave us a practice, and that practice was to be of good cheer. That's a practice. It's not a flippant pretending that you're happy when you're not. It is actually a practice where you are engaging in something within you, touching your intrinsic nature, which is joy itself, not based on circumstance. It's not a joy that's based on where everything is going well, so I'm happy, and everything is not going well, so I'm not happy. No, it's a joy that comes from deep spiritual practice. And then you overcome that world. You don't pretend bad things aren't happening, but you're not triggered by that world. Now you can act. And you're acting from the answer. In the world, there's going to be trials and tribulations. Be of good cheer. Practice. You overcome the world and you make a difference. So I would invite people on a regular basis to take breath, get a sense of what joy and harmony is alive within them, whether they have to think about something that brings them joy, and then seek to stabilize that, and then go into the world and act. Don't be a burned out activist where you're out just doing things and getting burned out, because a vision without action is a fantasy. Action without vision is chaos, and an activist that's burnt out is not going to do any good. So you have to do your spiritual practice so you're carrying the frequency of the answer, the frequency of what's trying to be born. And what's trying to be born is the joy and the ecstasy and the bliss that comes directly from the Creator, directly from the presence of God. And that's not a bypass, it's a realization that happens through spiritual practice.
Michael Beckwith, thank you so much. And ask you, I know you've left us with a lot to think about, but one sentence, leave me with one cue to help me to connect to God if I've not been able to do it. What would you tell us to think to make that connection happen tonight?
I would invite people to just extract their attention from the world for a moment, the world of effects, the world of appearances. Place their hand over their heart and ask, what is beating that? Am I doing that, or is something greater than me operating that? You'll have to come to the awareness that there's something bigger than us that created us, that moves through us, that expresses through us. We lean into it. We invite it. We surrender to it, and it leads the way.
Ashe. Thank you, my brother. Lots of love. Thanks. Thank you for taking the time.
I'll see you later.
Yep.
Wonderful day, and let's keep working together.
Bye, sweetie. Marianne,
Bye-bye.
the question is, what's the role? How do we connect to God now, and what can we do to keep this link together so we can evolve as better people?
Well, I think what Michael said is it. You find God by serving other people. The Course in Miracles says, don't look to yourself to find yourself, because you're not there. You find yourself in relation to others. And there's a line, one of the exercises in the Course is, where would you have me, what would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say, and to whom? When Michael gave that great line from Jesus about, be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. He didn't say, I have fixed the world. He said, I've overcome it. Meaning he represents a state of consciousness where we know that we live in our true self lives in in a stream of perfection, even while all this is going on. And we find that when we give our love to each other. There's nothing new under the sun here. There's just a level of deeper application of the things which by now we all already know.
Being a woman of prayer, could you leave us with a thought process that can keep our listeners connected to Source so that we can evolve to be better people?
Let's do it. Dear God, God by whatever name, Source by whatever name, Divine Creator by whatever name, we pray that all of the magnificent ideas and visions, insights, the words that have been brought forth here, the different insights, the different kaleidoscopic nuggets of truth, may they all find seed within our hearts. Before we close this gathering, we take this moment to send our deep best wishes, praise, thanks, and love to all of those who have shared tonight and to all of those who are part of this gathering, wherever they are. We pray that the words that have been shared here, the visions, the hopes, the dreams, the wisdom, might now expand within us all. That as we go forward from this point forward, we shall be more that of which we have spoken. We shall embody more that to which we aspire. And that through us and in us, love might replace all fear. Love might replace all darkness. Peace might replace all confusion. And a new world shall yet be born. We place the coronavirus, and most particularly, we place the fear and the suffering of so many into the hands of God. That a great miracle, a great mystery might now unfold. So great, so glorious is the Lord. And so it is.
So it is.
Amen. Thank you so much, Marianne Williamson. Let's end it with the voice of innocence and the voice of youth today. Alison Stone, in just a few words, how do you connect to Source, and what thoughts would you leave us to have a connection to Source so we can overcome the fear and move more as loving beings?
Between all of us, I've heard so many offerings, antidotes to fear, words of motivation and solace, and these prayers and suppositions. Really, I can even experience in my body the difference and the shift. So I'm so appreciative and grateful. And of course, as we know, fear is often simply because we're afraid of what we don't know. So this has, in summation, been an invitation for self-education, for self-exploration, and then the greater aerial view connected to the wisdom of service to others. And so two things that stood out to me just as everyone was giving their final thoughts. Two words that came to mind were courage and curiosity. And it's not necessarily as pretty as a word like compassion, but I think courage in this situation doesn't have to be wrapped in the grit and tenacity that we might always attribute to it. This courage might be gentle, it might be quiet. And then curiosity, as opposed to moving in judgment, of course, using discernment. I'm not saying, be discriminating and with wisdom, but operating from a standpoint of curiosity to acknowledge the mystery at hand. There are a lot of unknowns, and we often like to know everything that we need to do, and we're going to be in a space where we have to keep tuning in. We need to ask some questions we haven't asked. We need to listen for answers. And so I invite people to carve out time after this talk to be contemplative. You don't have to remember every single thing that was said. Of course, now we're able to also rewind and re-listen and go to sleep listening to this talk again if that's helpful. But just, hold on to one or two of the main points that really you internalized, and spend time digesting that and allowing that transformation to occur. That is courageous. And of course, in so doing in your own vessel, then of course you can pour out to others, not from the space of neediness, but from a fuller cup. So, my last recommendation is going back to a point I shared earlier, which is to seek first to understand before expecting to be understood. And a brief model that allows me to process any facet of my day, whether it's a conversation you have with someone about coronavirus, or you're sifting through what to do with your job or your family or anything. There's a simple game, I call it, keep, toss, or transform. And you place wholeness at the center, the goal, as it were, wholeness, love, compassion, source, if you'd like to use here. And then you ask yourself with each piece, whether it's the conversation, the person, an object, a decision you need to make, is this thing leading to wholeness and source, or is it leading to a sense of being more fragmented and broken? And if it's heading towards source, then you keep it. If it's leading toward a sense of being fragmented, you toss it. And if there's potential for it to be transformed, some elements maybe are just, clothed in fear, but now you get to reclothe them in love, then transform it. And this framework has been super helpful for me, so that you don't feel just so overwhelmed by all the decisions and choices you'll be making. So those are my final 3 points. To notice that courage right now might be gentle and quiet, to stand in a place of curiosity and be okay with mystery. And then when in doubt, or when you need to make decisions, just remember, keep, toss, or transform with source as your main focus.
I love that. Alison
Thank
Stoner from
you.
Simplicity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this was really what we wanted, the global pause for those of us who just wanted to share our personal experience of what we're going through, but also to offer each other tools. I believe in the practice of spiritual love. Instead of hugging and kissing now, just greet the person soul to soul. And you see the person here and you see them here, and you connect to source and you meet them. And you greet them with your Om Shanti, your Shalom, Salam Alaikum. And don't worry about the hugs and kisses. It's not as deep as when you really look into the eyes of another and see their divinity and their power. I think it's the most uplifting, most empowering thing. So Dr. Foojan, Zeine, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Any closing remarks that you'd like to do? And I might do a meditation at the end too as well.
I love it. I'm very reality based. So looking at what it is that's going on and what is the issue that maybe each person actually has to deal with, because the issues that we each have to deal with in this time are very, very different. Some people's financial, some people's actual illnesses, the family systems, and anything else that shows up for them. So really distinguishing what the issue is for them and looking at that issue, maybe start writing about it and looking at what it is that they need to do. What's the worst case scenario that can happen? Like Marianne said, worst case scenario might be I'm dying. Or what is any of those scenarios that could be there? How can I handle it if those scenarios are happening? And then write them down and create like an action, prioritize them. This really brings down anxiety a lot. So the reason I'm saying this is put it down, write it down, look at it, prioritize it, make it, okay, tomorrow is there anything I can do about any of this right now? Go ahead and do it. If not, when can I do it? Then put it aside and then connect. If you have people around your home, connect with them. They're already in your home.
Yeah.
Start creating quality time with them, quality conversation, in-depth, like relearn who you are and who they are, and love them from a whole new different places.
Yeah.
If you're alone or the different people, connect with social media, open your heart and be with them. Again, we're in this together, and we're all going to get through this the same way humanity has gone through so many of the different ones.
Right.
And I think this really brought for me the concept of responsibility and accountability, and how each one of us is really responsible, not only for us, but for every aspect. And I think this concept has gone around, but this is experientially right here in our face.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Foojan. So can I close up with a meditation? Is that okay? And as you were saying, the practicality of this time. I mean, if you've ever wanted to write a book, take this time to do it. If you want to do a new screenplay, take this time to do it. If you'd like to learn a new language of a culture that you've been fascinated by, take this time to do it. If you want to learn a new instrument, take this time and do it. If there's somebody that you're still holding some, animosity towards, and you're not feeling the love with them, write their names down on a piece of paper and write 108 times, I love you no matter what. Just 108 though, you can't do it 60. Because you'll find that as you go like 45, you're like, oh my God, how long do I have to do this? But go through it 108 times and you let them know, I accept what has happened between us and I love you as it is. And you will feel that the reason why we're going through this pandemic is that the universe, and maybe God's trying to signal to us, take care of you. Can you just take care of you? And if like Joseph Campbell once said, if everybody takes care of himself, no one will have to worry about anyone. So thanks again, and please stay tuned and let us keep together powerfully. And I'll just close up with a simple meditation on source. Make sure everything's on silence. So take a deep breath, and take a deep breath. And the question I'd like to raise is, what if this was my last moment? How would I feel? Who would I remember? What would I need to do? And what if I took this time to just move away from my limits and pettiness, small things that's distracted me from my truth? And I would break the identity crisis of thinking that I'm a man, a woman, Republican, Democrat, rich, poor, American, Iraqi, good-looking, ugly, fat, skinny, Muslim, Jew, atheist. What if I chose to let go of those labels? Because this moment in my life is the most important moment for me. How would I feel? Who would I think of? And who would remember me? I'd feel free. And I'd remember God. And love would think of me. So taking this global pause with our love and appreciation for the time that you've offered, we thank you. Take care and Om Shanti. And as Marianne said in her meditation for coronavirus, wash your hands, please. But be well with one another. And Michael, everybody has spoken so beautifully. Don't let this fear get the best of us. Use your wisdom. And let's things. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you. Thank you for